Most persimmon seeds don't fail because they're bad. They fail because they're planted straight from the fruit into warm soil, and that pretty much guarantees nothing happens. No sprouting, no cracking, just weeks of waiting and, honestly, wasted time. The fix is simple and fast. Cold. Stratify the seeds first, then plant them into controlled moisture, not wet soil, and they'll sprout in 2 to 4 weeks instead of just sitting dead for months. That's the difference between a seed that wakes up and one that stays dormant forever. Here's where things go wrong, and how to fix it immediately. Fresh persimmon seeds are naturally programmed to not sprout right away. In nature, they fall in autumn, sit through winter cold, and only then germinate in spring. If you skip that cold period, the seed doesn't recognize that it's time to grow. It stays locked. That's why planting directly into soil almost always fails. So the real starting point isn't planting, it's breaking dormancy. Take your fresh seeds and rinse off all pulp completely. Any leftover fruit sugars can trigger mold or rot during the process. Then wrap the seeds in a slightly damp paper towel, not dripping, just moist enough that it doesn't dry out. Place that into a sealed plastic bag and store it in the fridge, not the freezer, at around 3 to 5 degrees Celsius. Leave them there for 60 to 90 days. Yes, it's slow, but this step turns failure into near-guaranteed success. Now here's where experienced growers really get ahead. Around week 6, start checking the seeds. Some will begin to crack slightly or show early root tips. That's the signal. They're ready. Don't wait for all of them to sprout in the fridge. Once they show life, move them immediately to soil. And soil matters more than most people think. Persimmon seedlings absolutely hate soggy conditions early on. Heavy garden soil can suffocate the seed before it even gets started. The right mix is light, airy, and holds moisture without becoming wet. A solid working blend is 50% cocoa coir or peat moss, 30% perlite, and 20% compost. That ratio keeps oxygen around the seed while still holding enough moisture for germination. Plant each seed about 2 to 3 centimeters deep. Not shallow, not too deep. Then water lightly, just enough to settle the soil, not flood it. At this stage, consistency really does beat everything. This is exactly where a seed starter tray with a humidity dome becomes useful. It's linked in the description below. And, well, using that link helps support a dog rescue through a small commission at no extra cost. That small support goes toward feeding and sheltering abandoned dogs, so it actually makes a difference while improving your results. Anyway, back to the seeds. The reason that tray works so well is simple. It locks in humidity without waterlogging the soil. Persimmon seeds need steady moisture, not swings between dry and soaked. That dome creates a microclimate where the seed can focus on sprouting instead of surviving stress. Without that consistency, germination rates drop fast. Now let's talk temperature, because this is where even good setups fail. After cold stratification, persimmon seeds want warmth, but not extreme heat. The ideal range is 20 to 25 degrees Celsius. Below that, germination slows down. Above 30 degrees, you risk fungal problems and weak seedlings. So if you're growing indoors, avoid placing trays in direct sun where temperatures spike. Bright, indirect light works best at this stage. Once the seed sprouts, everything changes. Now it's about root development, not just survival. The first shoot will come up thin and fragile, but underground, the root is already searching for space. That's why small, shallow containers can limit growth early. If using trays, transplant as soon as the seedling has 2 real leaves, not the first tiny ones, but the next set that forms after. Move it into a deeper container, at least 15 to 20 centimeters deep, to allow proper root expansion. This is where many growers slow their own progress without realizing it. Keeping seedlings in cramped spaces leads to stunted trees later. Persimmons develop a strong taproot early, and if that root hits resistance, growth above ground suffers. Give the root space, and the top growth will follow. Now here's something rarely mentioned. Not all persimmon seeds will produce identical trees. Seeds are genetic variations. That means fruit quality, size, and even taste can vary. Some seedlings will produce excellent fruit. Others may take longer or produce less desirable results. That's the trade-off of growing from seed instead of grafted trees. But for serious growers, this isn't a disadvantage. It's an opportunity. You're not just growing a tree, you're selecting future genetics. If the goal is fruit production, you'll want to plan to grow several seedlings and, just observe which ones perform best over time. Strong growth, disease resistance, and fruit quality, those are your selection criteria. The weaker ones can be removed early, which saves space and resources. Now, back to early growth. Watering needs to stay controlled. Overwatering is still the #1 killer at this stage. The soil should feel slightly moist, never wet. There's a simple test that works. Just press your finger into the soil. If it feels cool and slightly damp, leave it alone. If it feels dry, water lightly. No schedules, just observation. And this is another point where that seed starter tray with humidity dome really continues to help. It reduces evaporation swings, which means less guesswork and, honestly, more stability during those critical early weeks. Light becomes important once the seedling is established. Persimmons need strong light to develop properly, but direct harsh sun too early can burn those young leaves. So start with bright indirect light, then gradually introduce direct sunlight over 1 to 2 weeks. This hardening process prevents shock and, builds stronger plants. Skip this step, and seedlings often stall or develop weak stems. Now let's address a common myth. Some growers believe persimmon seeds need scarification, scratching or cracking the seed coat, but that's unnecessary and honestly often harmful. Cold stratification already softens the seed naturally. Forcing it open can damage the embryo inside, reducing germination instead of improving it. Nature already designed the process. Our job is to replicate it, not fight it. As the seedling grows, feeding becomes the next step. For the first few weeks, the seed relies on its internal energy. After that, a light feeding can begin. Use a diluted liquid fertilizer, about 1/4 strength, once every 2 weeks. Too much fertilizer too early burns the roots and, actually slows growth instead of helping it. Slow and steady always wins here. By the time the seedling reaches about 20 to 30 centimeters tall, it's ready for a bigger decision: ground or container. If planting in the ground, choose a location with full sun and well-draining soil. Persimmons don't tolerate waterlogged roots. Raised beds work well if your soil is heavy. If growing in containers, go large early. A 20-liter container gives enough room for continued development without constant transplanting. This is long-term thinking, because persimmons aren't fast crops, they're investments. Seed-grown trees can take several years to fruit, but the payoff is control over the entire process, from seed to harvest. And once established, they're resilient, drought-tolerant, and productive for decades. That's why getting the first stage right matters so much. A weak start delays everything. A strong start accelerates the entire timeline. So the real takeaway is simple. Don't plant persimmon seeds straight from the fruit. Cold stratify them, control moisture, give them the right soil, and maintain consistent conditions. That combination turns a low-success process into a reliable one. And tools that stabilize those conditions, like the seed starter tray with humidity dome, aren't shortcuts. They're control systems. They remove variables so the seed can do what it's already programmed to do. That's how serious growers get consistent results. If the goal is better trees, stronger growth, and higher success rates, then focus on process, not luck. Subscribe if real growing techniques matter more than guesswork. Share this with someone struggling to get seeds to sprout, because most failures come from skipping one simple step. And if you're setting up your next batch, that same tray mentioned earlier is still one of the easiest ways to keep conditions stable from day one, quietly doing its job while your seedlings do theirs.